data prove that it cannot realize a reasonable return for each and every permissible use in the zoning district. Proof of inability to realize a reasonable return must be demonstrated by dollars and cents proof. In my experience, dollars and cents proof requires actual analytics, meaning economic data from a recognized professional demonstrating the non-likelihood of a reasonable return. Typically, use variances are supported by comprehensive reports from certified appraisers or other licensed professionals who have familiarity with the market and that can demonstrate that all uses permitted in the zoning cannot be conducted profitably on the property. To date, the applicant's submission does not meet this burden. While there is a letter from a real estate professional, the letter does nothing other than establish a property value. It does not contain an analysis of all permitted uses and the economic support for why they cannot be conducted profitably on the property. Another consideration for the ZBA is whether there exists a self-created hardship with respect to the use variance request. Finding a self-created hardship bars the ZBA from granting a use variance even if all other criteria are met. If at the time of acquisition of the property, the property owner knew or should have that the requested use was prohibited, then a self-created hardship exists. Here, the property was acquired many years ago, and the question arises as to what, if any, zoning was in place at the time of that acquisition, and whether the zoning that was in place would permit the proposed use. Ascertainment of these facts would be important in the determination of whether there is a self-created hardship. In sum, our opinion is that the proposed use is not exempted from local zoning regulation and that so far adequate proof has not been submitted to justify the board's issuance of a use variance. That's it.
Well, that caps it up pretty good. With that, I will continue to read what I put together. Dear Shandaken zoning board members, with the decision to propose site plan for the railroad yard with a maintenance shop having been tabled for 2 consecutive hearings, the Catskill Mountain Railroad is still actively pursuing an approval for our project. To that end, at this 3rd meeting of continued review and public comment, I respectfully submit the following statement. At the previous hearing on March 16th, a letter from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection dated March 15th was not read and was omitted as input to the hearing process. As it has significant bearing on approval of this project, find it attached, and I will read it. Seems how I never got entered into the process. It's addressed to Ms. Ann Riccadella, Zoning Board Secretary. Dear Ms. Riccadella and members of the Zoning Board, New York City Department of Environmental Protection, DEP has received a survey entitled Map of Lot Line Delineation Site Plans of the Catskill Mountain Railroad Company, Inc., prepared by Brooks & Brooks Land Surveyors, P.C., dated July 17, 2015, and last revised February 11, 2016. Based upon the review of the drawing, DEP has determined that the subject proposal, as shown, requires no DEP permits or approvals pursuant to the rules and regulations for the protection from contamination, degradation, and pollution of the New York City water supply and its sources. Thank you for the opportunity to review this activity. And we've reached the undersigned at signed Cynthia Garcia. Next, at the last public hearing, Mr. Rod Butterfast, representing Unique Taylor, made a number of statements to the board that were misleading and erroneous. 1, that the Shandaken ZBA should not approve the CMRR's application based on it having previously contaminated the Cornell Street Railroad Yard in Kingston, New York, as determined by both Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental surveys. There's a letter from the Ulster County DPW at the end of that package there, which indicates that they're looking to do an initial walkthrough on either March 11th or on March 16th or March 21st or the 28th. And in fact, that initial environmental walkthrough was done on the 28th, 12 days after Mr. Butterfast's statement. We still have not received any findings, so that was basically an out-and-out lie. Mr. Butterfass also stated to this board that he got information from Ulster County that they did not grant permission to install a track switch off the county-owned main line into our proposed railroad property. The statement was made without substantiation and is contrary to the CMRR's right for the return of the lease of Ulster County, which is in effect until May 31st, 2016, regardless of what the county planning board referral recommendations are. He also stated that CMRR had not addressed storage of materials and chemicals to the ZBA as indicated by the Ulster County Planning Board referral. Based on the letter I just read, and based on the fact that jurisdiction of storage and where the contaminants and all those things are going to be, it's basically a planning board jurisdiction, and has really nothing to do with the variance. And last, that Mr. Butterfass stated the Ulster County Planning Board referral placed requirements that the ZBA would have to vote majority plus one to approve this, when in fact it's merely a recommendation and it's not a required majority plus one vote. Based on that, I'm finished my comments. Thank you.
Based on the advice that we've gotten from the attorney, he felt that the information, one of the criteria would be the financial burden, one way or the other. He felt that that has not been sufficient to show a good reason why this is needed. So we have two options. One is to give you additional time to do that beyond a reasonable doubt of the fact that you're going to lose substantial money or without this variance being granted. Option two of that is without that at this point. One of our primary functions here, not only to do things that the town would like or not like, and to allow people to do things, grant variances and so forth, is to keep us out of court. And at this point, we don't have information enough, first of all, to make a valid decision. Secondly, at this point, if we did anything other than deny the permit, we would be able to defend it. So the option to submit to the board is if they want to allow this hearing to stay open, to allow you to come up with the ability to show financially what this would do to you, or not. I would submit to the board as a proposal. If they agree, then I have no option. I have no objection to allowing this to continue, to allow you to show us.
The way I see it, there's two issues. One is the self-created hardship or non-self-created hardship, which is one major aspect of the use variance. And then the other one is, dollar and cents computations for each and every allowable use in those zoning areas, that would need to be presented. And, if you need, I would be willing certainly to adjourn this for another month if you need time to do this. I just want you to be clear as to, really what's required. Okay. I think it's in his letter, in Larry Walensky's letter, and some of the other literature we've gotten, I think, from some of the other folks here. But certainly you could speak with Ann and Warren about that too, if you have any questions about that.
Do you have a copy of that letter? Before you.
So I have a question and a comment about the financial issue, dollar loss. A valuation has been placed on the property that assumably the property could be sold at that valuation. Just because that valuation is below the valuation of the purchase of the property, thereby booking a loss. Is that a financial hardship? Simply because people sell properties for less than they buy them all the time. So does that constitute a legal hardship in this case?
Well,
A financial hardship.
everybody's entitled to a reasonable return, so if you prove that would be the situation with that. There's no law requiring you to make a profit or anybody else to make a profit, but that is not best to be said. You just gain a reasonable return, because no other way of doing it.
I think the point is to establish what the return would be on each and every allowable use. I think that's more the issue.
That answers the one question about getting sold the property, but there are other uses of the property besides selling.
Right.
And that's what
Because simply selling at a loss does not constitute a financial hardship vis-a-vis the area application, does it?
because there are going to be other applications that could be performed on that property.
What if there were not? What if there were
If
not?
that was the only use of that property,
Yeah.
if there was no other use of the property, you sell it, then it'd have to be addressed separately, because then it would be considered, but that, unfortunately, that doesn't apply in this
But
application.
there are many other allowable uses.
Understood. If this application were to move forward, would we not be required to demand a environmental review?
Well, we have letters.
I don't think we've been discussing that, and I think under our town law, that would be necessary at least for a environmental assessment form.
A seeker one,
The
we
whole
found
secret
out that,
process.
that there is a building on the adjacent property that is registered with the State Historical Society. And that triggers in a seeker one.
Okay.
As a development. If you're working on a building that's registered or on a property adjacent to the building.
That would be simply filling out an environmental assessment form, and then from there, the board make a determination as to what to require, if anything else.
If any, yeah.
Who fills out that form?
The applicant. It's only
It's already been filled out and submitted to the planning board.
Okay.
That's a
I
level
didn't see that. I didn't have the question.
That's a level two.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you so much. You're right about the loss in sale price. I mean, that's not the legal test, just because they sell it for less. The other point is that, maybe Mr. Tuck can correct me, but if the zoning code was established in 1976, and they purchased well after that, that right there prevents them from being granted the use variance. So going through the exercise of that analysis of all the other uses and whether or not that provides a reasonable return is sort of a moot exercise.
When was the land purchased?
One was purchased in 1990, and the second piece was purchased in 2001.
I will have to further research. My book states that all the land uses in here revised from 2008 to 2012. So I'll have to go back and look what the zoning was for the date of the purchase. Because these books get updated periodically, so I need to know at the time they bought it, what the uses were for that.
Well, I'm still looking for an explanation as to how it was zoned hamlet residential in the first place. If it's been a rail yard since 1874.
Probably because it was vacant. I mean, it was not, I mean, someone owned it, but it was not an operating railroad at that point. Okay. Perhaps when the zoning came through, that's what they determined, that it may never be a railroad again. They didn't perceive there being a first railroad.
So the rail, they zoned around it.
Okay.
Should it have been more commercial since it was adjacent to the railroad? I didn't make those rules. Yeah, so now we got to deal with what we have. So I will look into
The rail corridor that Ulster County owns runs 40 miles through the county and then all through the entire length of Shandaken. So trying to zone around it wouldn't have made sense. I mean, with just the road operations. So the question is about the use of the rail yard for storage of equipment and all that. That property was not being used for that in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, or 2000, or now. the two parcels that the CMRR owns, the railroad. The museum has been using some of their property recently for similar uses under permitted by the boards. But the railroad operations do not change the zoning on either side of the railroad corridor.
We attempted to find a parcel in the town of Shandaken adjacent to the railroad zone for the use that they proposed, and we could not, one does not exist in adjacent to the property, just to move it. Their proposal is only permitted in a commercial light industry, at which time they only had 2 parcels. So if you could have found a Hamlet commercial, it would have been a special permit, which would have been a different level of regulation. But there are no parcels we can find adjacent to the current section of tracks that are
In Shandaken,
in Shandaken.
but there's no obligation that they purchase in Shandaken.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the hearing until next month, keep the public hearing open.
Should we get input from the applicant? Do you want to continue this? Sure. And are you clear about what?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait one second, I'm
Before you vote on that, could we get clarification about what Mr. Tutt said? If he needs to know what the zoning was in 1976, I can understand why that would take, some additional research. But the zoning in 1990 and in 2001 in that district was clearly the same as it is now. That zoning has never been changed. And all these residents here who bought their properties could, attest to that. So I think do you need additional information about the zoning at the time that the applicant purchased the property? If not, then I think you have criteria on which to make a decision now.
Since I don't have a hard copy in front of me of the zoning that was in effect at the time you purchased the property, I can't rule on that. My zoning, the dates in mind.
It's on the
Passed.
property card.
Like I said, I don't have it in front of me, so my due diligence is I have to do the research. That's what I have to do. I'm not arguing the fact that what you have may be the God's honest truth. I have to research. That's what they have me doing.
I feel if the applicant is willing to pursue this and put in the effort to do that, you should at least hear it out.
Will we vote on that motion?
We're in the process right now.
Yeah, a second.
Do you have a motion? Need a second?
Second. He seconded.
Okay. Do a roll call. Board Member Johnson?
Yes.
Board Member Reese?
Yes.
Board Member Lodi?
Yes.
Board Member Guggenheim?
Yes.
That's good.
Mr. Valley?
done, please take it outside.
Hi. I brought with me Elizabeth. Hello. My wife for 35 years.
One second.
I have some documentation in case I miss a few points. Do you have pictures there, or is that's somebody else?
This is from Shauna. And yes, we have pictures.
This is the letter that has to get out of the need to.
I'm gonna make copies.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd like to review. Thank you. Okay. Speak loud. I'd like to review our request for a variance to build a 10-foot expansion out the back of an existing building on our property, which we've been through several times. But the main reason for the request is that for us to build anywhere else on the property, it's either going to be that we build out the front and cover the church, a 129-year-old church which we have kept intact as a church, or build out the front of a living room, which does not service us at all, or build next to us. And the problem next to us, building onto what I call the annex, or the old Sunday school of this property, is that the distance to the back to build without a variance is 50 feet, and that would put us building at the very front of the annex, which would have us building over 3 grave sites from 1963 of 3 children that were buried there. I have no desire in my life to build a building over somebody's sacred space.
Do you have documentation to state?
Well, I'd have to go downstairs and get that documentation. I walked into this building back in late fall and was met by the secretary, Joyce. I met by Joyce, who went, "Oh, you're Mr. Bell," who proceeded to tell me how she went to Sunday school there and knew the history and did camps there. He said, "Do you know that there's 3 children buried at the front corner of the Sunday school of the annex?"
That would be this side of here, is that what we're talking about over here?
No, that's the variance violation right here. This is 50 feet there. From here to there, because this is a 40-foot building, that's 15 feet, so 25, that's 50 feet. So right here, which is the size of the building we'd like to make, there's 3 graves right here. And we've been, all through the years, people have mentioned, like, the side yard there is rolling, has dips. In fact, even our neighbor, Dave, used to come and say, "I think there's graves buried over there." Mounds, little rolling hills on a flat property.
Are there gravestones?
There's
We
no
do
graves.
have a number of gravestones further in the front, yes.
There's about 15, 16 gravestones in what we always, the cemetery part, but this was a surprise to us. She said it had been marked by pipes at one point, but it was not there when we entered the property back in 1991. Those were gone. That's our biggest concern here. I don't want to have my bedroom or anything over, particularly knowing that I'm over somebody's grave. We have improved this property a considerable amount, renovating the church completely, supporting foundations, tearing out this was an old building, it was in disrepair when we got it, tearing out any rotted wood, doing totally new construction on most of the building. We didn't change the footprint because that would have also entailed, going to variance. But when we got into there, we found out that the bedrooms were smaller than a baby's room, which is too small for our adult children and their grandchildren. And we don't have a place to enter the house. We don't have a mudroom. We really don't have a washroom. And yes, we were leading the church as a church, and my wife and I are movement pioneers.
We are yogis and movement specialists, and really all we want to do is use the main sanctuary as our studio to do our private daily practice in.
We've done that. We had
It's been a
lofts.
lifelong dream of
We've
ours.
had lofts together in New York City for 15 years where we would have a dance space, a movement space, and do our work there.
Mr. Bell, did you consider putting the proposed addition on this corner here?
That's a violation of the variance, so we have to reapply for the variance because we can't go, Mayor, this is 50 feet.
Right.
So this is really the only place where we wouldn't have to apply for the variance.
Right. I'm saying to put it here, to
Well-
apply for a variance, given that it would not intrude, as close to your property.
Right, there are rolling, it becomes a mystery. We know for sure that there's graves here. We don't know exactly here because we don't have documentation.
Where are the graves for sure,
Right here.
Right alongside the structure.
And this would be the one place where we wouldn't have to go through this process, so we don't want to do that.
I mean,
But on that side yard, there still are a number of mounds, which is